Yeah, we Reddit listeners, and welcome to the third installment in the You franchise that we are covering. I am one of your hosts, Meggie,
And I'm also one of your hosts. My name is Laura.
and just like I said, we are on the third book in the You series, You Love Me. We have Joe kind of escaping LA after he just got out of jail and is no longer in Love's life or his son's life.
Yeah, big shift here.
Yep, he was paid $4 million to essentially relocate to Bainbridge, which is a little place in Washington outside of Seattle.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest, baby.
Pretty exciting stuff. So he's not going to do the cities anymore. He's not going to
No.
do LA or New York.
He's Mr. Quiet Life, and he's the new Mr. Rogers, and he's here to retire and just be a little bookish man. And he gets a job at a library.
He gets a job at a library, and this is where the third book picks up, is where he's volunteering with this library in this place that he doesn't really know, but he's been kind of put there by the Quinn's family. He found a new love interest. I know you guys were wondering, when's Joe gonna find a love interest? And he does fast in these books, and her name
Yeah,
is Mary Kay
immediately.
DeMarco. Um,
Yeah.
which I didn't figure out until really far into the book that she is named after the beauty line Mary Kay Cosmetics because her mom was obsessed with them.
Oh yeah, they said that in the first chapter that her mom had like the pink convertible because she was like the Mary Kay lady.
I never put those two together. I
That's
always
so
saw the
funny.
pink cars and I was like, God, I wish that was me because they were so cool. They were like in a very light shade of pink and I
Hey,
always wanted them.
when this podcast picks up, we're gonna get you that pink car, Meg.
I want that brand sponsorship. And
Aw.
thank you. She is a library branch manager at Bainbridge Public Library in Washington. Small town, like we said, not many people there, and the ones that are
No.
there kind of seem like they know each other. Like they've been to high
Yeah.
school together. They do not move out of this city.
Yeah, so we really pick up with like Mary Kay's like already given the Joe the job, but they're really kind of meeting each other for the first time, and he's very involved with her essence. She's worked there for 16 years. We learn that she has a kid, so he has a kid. They have so much in common. We also learn that Joe's son was born 14 months ago, and they hit it off pretty quickly. So they follow each other on Instagram pretty right off the bat.
Hmm. Yep. And so, this library does not do a background check. He got the
No.
job immediately. And she's kind of like, okay, here's a tour of the library. And while I get your badge ready, can you just kind of sit down? She has a phone call with an older man, Howie, who she reads poetry to. And Joe's already getting jealous. He's like, oh my God, who is this? Who is this old man? But it's just Howie.
Joe, you gotta start trusting people.
Listen, a man named Howie is not your competition. Let me tell it to you straight. I think you're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But Mary Kay and Joe hit it off pretty quickly. They already start eating lunch together every day. He's already gets promoted, which is weird because I don't know what promotion you would get at a library
Mhm.
within like your first few weeks of working there. And we also get introduced to her friend Seamus, who's from high school, and he's just like a CrossFit bro. He's just kind of there for most of the book.
Yeah, he's described as a middle-aged man dating a 22-year-old. And the 22-year-old just broke up with him, so he's not doing well. And Mary Kay wants to reiterate that it's like, oh, Samus just has really bad luck with these women. He just has such an open heart, and they just take advantage of that because they're 22 years old. And it's like, MK, whose side are you on here?
Yeah. Yeah. And listeners, if you already couldn't tell, this book really just drags on for a good like few hundred pages. So just lots of conversations just happen in this book. Like that was something I noticed because this next scene is where like Mary Kay invites Joe out to lunch and it's a surprise. She invited her two best friends, Melanda, who's like a girl boss hashtag over and over again, futures female type. And
Yeah,
then
and if you
Seamus
are my
shows up.
iPhone, it is not Melinda. iPhone
It's
kept trying to hit me with that
Melanda,
autocorrect.
yes, iPhone. But
Yes.
this is like a 10-page conversation essentially. Like nothing happens during it other than like Melanda and Joe butt heads and Seamus is intense. And it's like, well, why did I need to read 10 pages of this?
Yes, Melanda is very pussy hat me too, woke liberal
Yes.
feminist online. Like I feel like she would like Gina Halser, the CIA female director, because she'd be like, she's breaking the glass ceiling without thinking about all of her previous war crimes. Is kind
Oh
of the
yeah,
vibes I get from her.
that's a good vibe get.
And so Melanda and Mary Kay have women's night, which includes getting a drink at 11 Winery in town. And Mary Kay drunk texts him, and he's like, I'm at the bar nearby for boys' night, which is just him watching sports, kind of surrounding other
Hmm.
boys. Sure, why not? That counts. And he makes a joke that, like, sometimes women and men can drink at the same bar. Like, Mary Kay, it's not the 60s. And Mary Kay lets slip a little I love you.
Oops.
Whoopsie.
Uh-oh. But they end up meeting up for a drink. And now we have a few more pages of conversation. The TLDR here is Mary Kay's like, Joe, why are you here? What are you running from? And then Joe basically gives the diluted version of his backstory, which includes made up names, no murder, no stalking, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, he changes everyone's name in his history. I think
Yeah.
Love is Lauren. Don't know about the other ones. And they have a very fun time. He doesn't admit that he has a kid. Meanwhile, she says she got pregnant when she was 19 and her mom left her dad suddenly to move to Bainbridge. And she felt guilty about leaving him that way, especially because her mom stayed on the phone with him for compliments. Sounds like an icon. I did that with
Yeah.
my ex for years. Um He deserved it, though. Not the dad. Dad's nice. So what we get from here is that she has daddy issues, which I think is pretty important to know for MK because I think it manifests in her
Yeah.
personality quite often.
Oh, 1,000%. But they get a little tipsy doodles at this little hang that they're having. They end up making out in the bathroom before it can progress to anything more. Because Joe's like, all right, let's do this. I'm in. She panics. She gets up. She leaves. She calls in sick the next day. And Joe's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in love with me.
Yeah.
And she ends up coming to the library way, way later in the day, and she seems really distraught. And she's like, Joe, I got to take a step back. We cannot do this. We cannot be together. I have a kid. And Joe's like, hey, we can slow like us down, whatever this is. And she's like, no, Joe, there is no us. There is no it. Like, this can't be anything. And Joe's like, oh, okay. Well, we'll take a step back and we'll reconvene. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, Joe does the classic thing where he is put in the unrealistic, non-existent friend zone, and as many men do, he decides to bide his time waiting for her to just come around because women are irrational apparently.
Yeah.
So he's trying to just give her space, being like, it's okay to be friends, but I guess I'll have expectations and put them all on your shoulders. And while he is doing this, he does the very casual thing you do when you're trying to be friends with a girl, which is run by their house. And while
Yeah.
he's running on this path, just kind of checking in on MK, he bumps into her daughter, Nomi.
Yeah, and Nomi's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Just stretching like I normally do at this spot in my run. I'm not looking at your mom through the window because I wanted to see the beer in her Instagram picture because I know she doesn't drink beer. How are you, Nomi?" And they end up going to like a convenience store so she can get coal. And he's like, "Oh, I gotta go get myself a lemonade or whatever the fuck." But he learns that they're going to be going to Seattle for their little weekend hangout, family time tomorrow, and he goes, "Got it. I'm unofficially invited. I'll take the early ferry since you just told me you always take the 11 a.m. I'll take the 10 a.m. Bada bing, bada boom. This is easy for both of us."
He's so excited to have this little quote unquote family time because now he's kind of taking Nomi under his wing. He notices she reads a lot of Dylan Kiebold, which is, don't know if you know this, but it's the Columbine Shooters Manifesto,
Yeah,
apparently.
weird choice from Caroline here, but I guess we gotta go with it because she's the author.
Yeah, she seems to Nomi seems to love this guy,
Like
which is
guys,
like,
like I gotta say, like throughout this like book, it's not mentioned just like once casually that she's reading this book. Nomi always has a copy of this like in her hand or in her book bag. Like it is mentioned pretty much every time Nomi comes up, I feel like.
I don't think I ever had an obsession with school shooters
No.
as a teenager, but I do understand the draw of teenagers to the macabre and sort of the more dismal and depressing things of life. Like I was really obsessed with A Clockwork Orange, and really
Yeah.
loved. Malcolm McDowell, I think, is the main character in that.
Yeah, I was gonna
So I
compare
don't
it
know.
to, I was gonna compare it to, like, when people go through their Titanic phase.
Mm,
Um,
I'm still
but
going through
yeah,
that,
but I feel
honestly.
like school shootings is a little bit different. It's a little bit it's not quite a Clockwork Orange, it's not quite Titanic. It's just
Yeah.
a little off, you know?
Yeah. So, anyways, TLDR is she needs psychiatry, but she has no time because she is going to Seattle. Maybe that's the best therapy there is. Go to the rainiest city in America.
Aw.
And while they are on this little ferry, Joe is getting very upset because he is coincidentally on the same ferry as them. And shit hits the fan because he sees that MK actually does, in fact, have a husband, which sucks for him. But
And his name.
he's just waiting it out. He's in the friend zone, anyways. He's on the sidelines.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not in the game.
poor Joe. Not only was this person he was stalking on the same ferry as him, that person is also married.
Dude, doesn't it fucking suck when you see that?
Y'all, if I had a freaking nickel anytime my plans were foiled as ruthlessly as this. But we learned that Phil is a has-been rock star. He used to be in a band called Sacra Phil. And Joe decides to abandon his stalking, oh, we're gonna casually run into each other plans, and instead spends the next 36 hours learning every possible thing he can about this man.
And his band must have done moderately well because he has a Wikipedia.
Yeah.
There's an album cover with MK's like legs on it. Ooh la la. So at some point they had a bustling sex life. That's bad for Joe. And
Yikes.
after these 36 hours of meditating, aka stalking him, he shows up to Phil's studio and he's like, I gotta come up with a plan to get rid of this rat. He calls Phil the rat the whole time.
Yeah.
Phil is talking on the radio about artists being memorialized after they died. And I thought, okay, maybe now is a good time for Joe to kill him because it could be a suicide after this radio. That would have
Mhm.
been really smart to me, but he
Yeah.
doesn't. He just
No.
kind of lets him go.
Yeah, because like afterwards, Joe's kind of planning his move, but then he hears Phil and Mary Kay fighting on the phone. So he's like, okay, maybe I don't have to kill him because it sounds like there's trouble in paradise already, and murder won't fix that. So it's like he's getting so close to realizing why it's a bad idea, but for all the wrong reasons.
Because the subtext does exist that I don't know if you remember, Mary Kay has daddy issues, and after they fight, they share a mutual I love you on the phone, and Joe is freaking out.
Yeah. So we kind of flash forward a little bit in the book. It's now mid-December. Mary Kay's off taking care of her dad, and she comes back and she's like, "Oh, hey Joe, I told my dad all about you. I really think you guys would get along." And Joe's like, "That's because you're obsessed with me and I'm obsessed with you. We're in love."
Really sucks
Um,
too, because during this time at Thanksgiving, Phil is tweeting about being whipped. And
yeah.
Mary Kay's Joe fell down the stairs and he has a hole in his bone. If my husband, I would kill him.
My favorite thing about this whole like exchange of Mary Kay coming back and Joe stalking their Twitter and Instagram about it is that the moment Mary Kay comes back from like their Thanksgiving break, he's like, "Oh, Mary Kay, I have to head out early because I have to go hang up some Christmas lights. And I know how much you love Christmas lights." Like he uses that as a way to impress her because he knows that she was fighting with Phil about who's going to hang up the Christmas lights, so he has to show her that he loves to put them up.
He's giving season one, and by season one, I mean book one of the ick, where he just did too much for Beck and was too
Oh,
readily available. It's like sometimes, and I don't want men to take this as a standard, and I don't want women to take this as a standard, but sometimes men need to be a little unavailable for
yeah.
us to not be emotionally abusive or like play with our emotions, but be a little unavailable.
If you come off too strong, it's scary. That's what it is. The TLDR is it's too much.
It is like, I mean, I don't know. The Aquarius in me is such a hopeless romantic at the start, making playlists and stuff. But like, once I win, then I'm just
Yeah.
out, you know. And we need a little bit of that from
You
our
gotta
boys.
build it up, Joe. It's all about checks and balances here. And you want to know what else Joe's gonna do after he hangs up his Christmas lights? He's gonna go to Phil's Narcotics Anonymous meeting so he can really get the intel on this guy. So he's like, I'm gonna befriend him so I can destroy him. Murder's too much. I get that. Because he's a changed man now.
Yeah.
So in this Narcotics Anonymous meeting, Phil just uses the time to just like basically bitch about his wife and all of that and
Give
his
us type 5.
daughter.
Yeah.
And Joe ends up using the really great alias of Jay as his Narcotics Anonymous name so that he won't get linked back to Mary Kay. Like, okay, Joe, you couldn't think of anything better?
I feel like Narcotics Anonymous is a great place for performers to be. So after Phil gives his type 5, he is approached by Jay, aka Joe, afterwards, who is hyping him up, being like, dude, I love the band. And then immediately wins over Phil, as it
Oh,
would
yeah.
any performer. And Joe does plant kind of some seeds of doubt about not writing any more albums, and the process is taking hold in Phil's brain. He's starting to be like, fuck, I really need to be an artist and isolate everyone I love, so I can work on my material.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah, and so that sequence kind of ends, and the next day at work, Mary Kay's, pleading with Joe, like, "What am I gonna do? I know Nomi would really love a cat, but like, she's about to go away to college, and I have this friend who like is having a bunch of cats right now." And Joe, ever the gentleman, decides to adopt 3 cats. So in case Mary Kay wants any of them, he has 3 on standby. And Mary Kay doesn't think it's weird at all because Joe's like, no, I've wanted 3 cats for a really long time ever since I showed up here.
And he doesn't give them good names. With
No.
threes, you could have really great names. Bed, Bath, and Beyond.
Oh, that's a great one.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Instead, he gives these cats the names Riffic, Licious, and Tastic. And just to like
Tastic.
hold on, Tastic. Just to hold on to, I guess, to like bond with Mary Kay.
Yeah, he thinks like, much like the Christmas lights, he's like, now this is how you get a woman.
So after he buys these cats, he just can't resist. He goes and he watches through his little binoculars of their imploding marriage. And while he is watching on this path, this public path, he's really losing his edge. He's not doing
Yeah.
a great job
No,
at being
there's no
sneaky.
finesse anymore.
Melanda
Where's the
attacks him.
artistry?
Melanda hits him over the head, and it's like, shit, oh no.
Yeah, Milanda's on to him, and she's accusing him of being a pedophile and that he's into Nomi, and he cannot calmly explain that he is just stalking her mother, not Nomi, because that's of course better. And they get into a fight. He ends up knocking her out, locks her in his whisper room that he had custom built in the basement. That's supposed to be soundproof.
Oh, but guys, it's not soundproof.
No.
No, we can hear Melanda yelling. And while she is, right now she's out cold, he sends an email from her phone about how she's looking for jobs in Michigan, sends a text to a friend, Nettie, essentially bitching about Nettie, pretending that she was supposed to be sending that text to Mary Kay. And then she texts Mary Kay that she has a job interview, and she can't actually, she doesn't really have time to meet up for a drink. She's just got to go to Michigan now. She's so excited for her new life.
Yeah. And Joe quickly learns that Melanda texts a lot, so if he's gonna pretend to be her, he's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah.
But when she wakes up, she's rightfully pissed because she's been abducted. And Joe says, "No, this is your fault because you're a bad person. Let me read your little diary in your notes app." And he starts just reciting to her like all the mean things she says about Mary Kay. And I like this. Melanda's like, yeah, so like those are
Yeah.
my feelings.
He does quote that she like texted Seamus asking who was a better lay in high school, Mary Kay or Melanda. And also is using college girls to intern for her like female incubator program. And
Yeah.
not giving them any college credit or paying them. But she tries to appeal to his sympathy, being like, um, listen, actually, I don't know. I might have used the wrong pronoun. It might have been he trying to appeal to her sympathy. Don't really know.
Yeah.
Anyways, he goes in, figures out her favorite movies are like Woody Allen movies. So he turns on the TV and picks up the remote and is just kind of showing her that she has all these Woody Allen movies. Basically, she's just a hypocrite. She's not a feminist. But he
No.
has no idea what to do with her because he doesn't want to kill her. He doesn't
Yeah.
want to kill
Yeah.
her.
So he's got his work cut out for them.
Mhm.
But he starts using Melanda's phone as like a way to get in Mary Kay's good graces through the eyes of Melanda by being like, you should at least talk to Joe and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And also Joe's being real cringe with these texts because like every seventh word he has to type like LOL or XOXO. And he's laying it on thick, and Mary Kay doesn't question it at all. She's like, "Yeah, I'll go get a drink with Joe. What's the worst that could happen?"
Mhm.
They go get a drink finally. She tells Joe that she's married, and that's why this like whole thing was so weird and bad. And Joe is being ever the gentleman and like understanding. So he's gonna go give Melanda some donuts as a
Mhm.
thank you for getting abducted by him and him getting to use his phone to get into inside Mary Kay's head.
Yeah.
But Melanda's not having it. She's taunting him a lot.
Yeah, she is not ready for this HQ trivia notification to go off. She does
No,
not want any more quiz time. She is
no.
like, us girlies, we talk all the time. You don't have the upper hand. Let me just call her. And he's realizing he can't go without calling MK back, and Melanda just adding this pressure, saying that he'll never get it between real friends is really stressing him out. She
Yeah.
also says that Phil and Melanda dated in high school before MK, and him dated in high school. And she said that MK told her that Joe uses too much teeth when he kisses, which, as we know from book two, Joe freaking hates when people dog on his kissing sexy style.
Yeah, yeah. So what Joe is gonna do is he's gonna march out of this basement, march over to Melanda's condo, and set the scene that she had to leave in a hurry so this alibi gets sold. And she's still texting, Mary Kay as Melanda saying, "Oh, I met a guy, so I'm gonna be here forever, essentially, just to buy himself some more time." And he also tells Mary Kay that she should start flirting with Joe. And Mary Kay just listens. She starts flirting with Joe like real hard, like sexy flirting, not even like "Oh, you look like so cute and nice today." Like, no, she goes in. She lays it on thick, y'all.
Oh yeah, the next day at work, they're flirting, they're talking about thinking of each other in the shower, and
Yes.
it's getting super heated. And he texts from Melinda's, really trying to just goad her into fucking him.
Right?
It doesn't help either that it's like they are trying to teach these old people how to use technology with Nomi so she could get credit, volunteer credit for a class. And MK is seeing how good Joe is with her kid.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot of things are going in Joe's direction, except for the fact that he has a girl in his basement. But Miranda has a new strategy. She's gonna play good girl, nice girl. And she's gonna give Joe like just a little bit of intel into her life. And so Miranda tells this story about how, a big reason she's always stayed and like why she cares for Nomi so much is because she considers Nomi as part hers because she had an abortion in high school, and the reason that Mary Kay stayed pregnant in high school is because Melanda was like, "I regretted my abortion. You have to keep yours." And Melanda was there in the hospital when she was born. So that's why she's like, "I'm also a mom." A little bit
yeah,
of delusion and kind of like ownership levels there, which are questionable, but
I do
um,
gotta say that out of everyone who seems to be pleading for their lives in this position of being killed, Melanda seems the most genuine in giving Stockholm syndrome. Like, I
yeah,
really thought she was just like, okay, you know what? I am a bad person. Because as she's watching these Woody Allen movies nonstop, she's also starting to like hate women. So she's just
yeah.
kind of turning on everything. And she's like, maybe Minnesota would be good. I really just like fucking hate it here and I hate being single. And okay, I'm ready to be let out. And I believed her. I believed she would
Yeah.
not say anything.
Yeah, yeah. So before this happens, like Mary Kay ends up giving Joe some chocolate strawberries for Christmas. Someone shoulder checks Joe and he drops all of his 6 chocolate strawberries. It's very sad. And then we learn that he's like a hired messenger by the Quins and he's like, "Hey, you need to stop looking on Love's Instagram. This is a warning." So a little bit ominous. And when Joe goes back there, really sad about his strawberries, that's when Melanda starts pleading with him to like, "Let me just go to Minnesota. I'm a bad girl. I'm a bad person. Bad girl, go Minnesota."
And he's kind of thinking of letting her go. Phil texts him a song at this point that he's clearly written about Melanda, which, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe don't release it.
Yeah, yeah. Melanda's also like, "I had an affair with Phil. This is why you have a secret about me now that I don't want someone to know. I have a secret about you you don't want someone to know." let's work together.
See, Milanda's the realist, but at this moment, the doorbell rings and it's MK.
Yeah, and you know what she's gonna do, y'all? She's gonna get naked.
She's gonna get naked. They're gonna start mutually masturbating. Okay, I mean, hats off to her. I've always felt awkward doing that in front of a partner.
Right? Like, it's like, I'd rather just go have sex, thank you very much.
Because, like, part of it is also a performance. But, anyways, that's the first act I guess they choose to do.
Just ease into it, they say.
I don't know. And she just, like, will not let him touch her. And afterwards, she's like, oh, geez, what am I doing? And then she just leaves.
Yeah.
She comes, and she leaves.
She comes and she goes. That's
She comes and
poetry,
she
baby.
goes.
Put that in one of your songs, Phil. But Joe did hear some noise when, they were mutually masturbating, as you do
Yeah.
in Bainbridge, Washington. So he's like, I gotta go check on Miranda because I told Mary Kay that it was the cats. It wasn't. And I'm gonna go talk to Miranda about this whole letting her go thing. And before he can even talk about it further with her, he finds Miranda in a pool of her own blood and the TV shattered on the floor. She's killed herself, y'all.
Melanda has taken her blood, and again, this is the reason I genuinely feel like he should have let her out. Just wrote single white female on the wall in blood, which I didn't get. I was like, is that to indicate to the police that she is a single white
I
female?
don't know. Maybe that's one of her favorite movies. Like, I couldn't tell you.
She's like, Joe, yes, I've gone, but before I go, you gotta watch this in
Can you
memoriam.
log this on my letterbox, Joe, really, really quick for me?
She writes 5 stars in blood underneath it.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
so funny.
so Joe
Um,
sends a big goodbye from Melanda to MK, and this is like a petty goodbye to make sure that he has covered his tracks. He admits to
mm.
MK from Melanda's phone that she was sleeping with Phil, and he's gonna give her kind of a peaceful death. Nope, not death, funeral. Um, oops.
There's a difference.
There's a big difference. The death already happened and it was not peaceful. He brings Melanda to this steep trail in Fort Ward, and I didn't really get this scene, but I kind of imagined he goes up this trail and it's pretty high up and steep, and then he like rolls her into this cove.
Yeah, I pictured it like, when you're on like a hiking trails and there's like those little like just like fall offs that like you could run down but it probably hurt. I just kind of pictured him like careening her off of one of those edges. She falls down like like down like a unforged path that nobody would technically go down so you can
Yeah.
bury someone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I kind of figured that too. I just didn't really get how he got dirt on
Yeah,
her.
well, you were wrong and I was right.
So while he is burying her, he notices what he thinks is lightning, but actually it's not lightning. It's flash photography because this is the modern day and age, and the guy who hit the chocolate strawberries out of his hand is taking a photo of him and is like, "Some guys just never change, Goldberg."
Yeah, this guy's name is Oliver, we learn. He's a weird character. I picture him with just some like weird nondescript New York accent for some reason, and he's always wearing a black leather jacket and like
I
has like
pictured
really
him
greased back
bald.
hair.
I don't know
Oh,
why.
really?
Yeah.
I pictured him with like really like just like too greased back hair.
Oh, that's
Um,
fun.
but anyway, Oliver's not having any of this. Let me bury my wannabe girlfriend's best friend in the woods. He knocks Joe out. Joe wakes up in his whisper room. The tables have turned.
Hmm.
And Oliver's not going to tattle on Joe, is what we learn. We learned that Oliver, like, he used to be a writer. He was hired by the Quins, and he's here to keep an eye on good old Joe and make sure he comes nowhere near love. Um,
Yep. He also hates the Quins, and
yeah.
here's his little idea, which is to make a poor boys club, and it is that the Quins gave Joe a lot of money, 4 million to be exact. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna pay Oliver to keep his girlfriend happy, Minka. Not the fact that his mom has cancer. Oliver also drops that, but it's not for his mom with cancer.
No, it's
It's for
always for
his
Minka. We love Minka.
it's always for Minka. There's like an app called First Dibs that he can just buy rich people art on and like
Yeah.
chairs and shit. Which I wonder if
Yeah.
that's a thing, because I would love to peruse it in my spare time. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't buy anything, but
yeah, so throughout the rest of this book, Oliver just will send Joe like a link to a painting or a chair and be like, "Buy this for me." And Joe's like, "Ah, I gotta keep him quiet," and then buys it.
mhm.
So the next day of now that Joe's free, they cleaned up the whisper room. Um, Joe gets a text on Miranda's phone from Mary Kay just saying, "Hey, be well, peace out, we're done." So Miranda's dumped. No one's coming to look for her.
Yeah.
And Mary Kay's being really calm the next day, and Joe's like half expecting, her to confide in him, but it's not happening. And meanwhile, Joe's also really trying hard to avoid Oliver because Oliver wants updates throughout the day, which would drive me crazy. That is one feeling that is valid I've seen of Joe's is that he is being pestered throughout the day by Oliver,
Oh my god, it's like a parent asking for updates in high school. It's like,
right?
"Leave me
Like
alone.
send a picture.
Send a picture. Where are you? Are you sleeping at our house? You're not doing
So
anything bad."
So Joe can, appease Oliver and not be doing anything bad. He
Mhm.
decides that he's going to put cameras up all over Mary Kay's entire house.
That's
What
what the good
any of
guys
us would
do.
do.
Yeah. Bad boys, they stay in their own lane. Good boys, they install cameras. So the first
The
night,
bad boys are in IT.
bad boys go to marketing, good girls go to IT. So MK and Phil are fighting the first night about Phil cheating. MK gets
Yeah.
right to the core of it. But the combo turns around to be like, oh God, the thing that guys do where Phil's like, I don't deserve you. And she's like, no, stop,
Yeah.
baby pudgy little
This
pumpkin.
this conversation is a roller coaster of things because she's like, "You cheated on me." He's like, "Oh, you're right, babe. I'm so sorry. I'm such a bad guy." And she goes, "Well, I cheated on you." And he goes, "What? Why would you do that to me, you stupid bitch?" And she's like, "That's not fair. You
Yeah.
can't have done that and do that." So the
Their
TLDR
conclusion is
here,
to fuck.
they
That's their
fuck.
conclusion. For
That's the conclusion there. And
I
Joe's
guess.
pissed.
Yeah, he's mad. The next day, he's trying to put moves on MK at work, but she's being distant and in her head. So he's like, I'm going to go to the meadow to read, which MK told Phil, they don't ever read anymore, which I would also be kind of mad about
Yeah,
personally.
yeah. And none of Joe's two ideas to get Mary Kay to talk to him and be invested with him are working. So
Mm-mm.
he's going to decide to freaking bail. So he just like decides to also leave his three cats behind because that's normal. And he
Yeah.
just packs up his car and decides to leave. But Nomi's like standing at the edge of his driveway being like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, and he essentially is like, okay, you know what? I will stay to fight for us. Your daughter seems to like me. Maybe it's worth it. And the fight is to go buy drugs from a guy in the city of Seattle named Ajax, probably to pose an accidental overdose of Phil. And Oliver is following him, and he's like, "Joe, buddy, buying drugs. That's not on the list of good guy behavior." Oliver's like Santa Claus. He's like, "Are you
Yeah.
being nice or naughty?"
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, "If you want to be on my good list, you got to buy me this fun chair."
So Oliver is headed to the North Pole, aka Vegas for boys trip, and Joe is listening to couples therapy that Phil and MK are going to now, and
Yeah.
sneaks into MK's room. We get a little new
This is
version.
so weird. So he goes to lay in her bed just to like know what she's feeling. And then he decides to do some home alone shit and he's gonna sabotage their house essentially. So instead
Yeah,
of like, doing anything big, he's gonna like crank up the volume on the TV so that way she'll get mad at Phil that he turned off the volume too loud. Like,
I would
Joe,
go
really?
crazy. I would go crazy. Could you imagine the gaslighting of like you and your partner and like the coffee spilled and they're like, I told you to put a cap on it. And it is like, no, I swear to God, I did not do that. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, he's like loosening like the table, the coffee table they just built, so you set something on it, it's gonna break. Like it's
Yeah.
it's too much, Joe. It's
Joe
much too
also
much.
plants heroin in the house, which at this point I would think I was delusional. And as he's walking down the stairs, Nomi comes in and he's like, "Papa, is that you?" But it's Joe. He says he was just returning a book, and she calms down.
Yeah, and she's like, "Do you want to see my bong?" And he goes, "Sure." And so Nomi shows him her bong.
Yeah, she has a transportable bong for some reason. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it was interesting that Carolyn didn't write like, "Oh, she has a pipe or something," because like that's something you can easily move around.
Like a
But the
pipe, even like a small bubbler, but it's a bong?
Yeah,
I don't
but a
know.
whole bong she's just whipping out of her.
Yeah, so she's smoking this bong on the porch and she's high and she's bringing up that she thinks that maybe someone, maybe Phil or MK put cameras in the house. And she's like, actually maybe I'm paranoid. I don't know. And Joe's like, yeah, that sounds pretty crazy. I don't think
Yeah, and then
anyone
she
would do that.
decides to, lay it on extra thick and talk about how nobody really cares that Milanda's gone because they thought she was a pedo. There was, like, rumors of her sleeping with one of her students.
Mhm.
And so Joe's like, I've heard enough here." And he's like, you're right. I gotta take down all the cameras, and be a good guy." So he does that, but he accidentally leaves his coffee there, so he has to go back and get the coffee, but that's when Mary Kay and Phil come back. So now he has to hide in the bathroom and listen to them fight. Whole again, messy. Where's the finesse, Joe? You've gotten so sloppy.
I know, seriously. Like a cup with your name on it.
Buddy.
We should have
Buddy.
learned from the mug of piss, but we
Yeah.
don't.
Why did you bring your coffee to go get your cameras? Like, what are you doing?
Lacks critical thinking skills for how smart he is.
Ugh.
So MK and Phil are fighting about this movie night. Phil agrees to go eventually, but Joe's like, "No, I have a plan. I have a plan to invite Phil somewhere else. That's not good." So he does eventually invite Phil out, kind of stroking his ego, like, "Hey, one of my buddies who's like your biggest fan wants to meet you." And Phil is like, "Fuck it. I'm not going to go watch Reality Bites at the library with MK. I'm going to go meet up with Joe." She keeps calling Phil. He's like putting it to voicemail because he has told her that he went to a meeting and his sponsor thinks that he shouldn't go to this movie night, which is such a fucking cop out because you can't, there's nothing you can come back to that. If your partner says that, you're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And so Joe's here at this show just kind of hanging out. Like he has no plans. He got Joe to not go to the movie night. Sorry, got Phil to, bail on Mary Kay and, go here. Mary Kay shows up at this show and she is pissed. And Joe's like, "Uh-oh, that's my cue to skedaddle." So he bolts.
Mhm.
And moments later, he's ferried back from the city. He's back in Bainbridge. Mary Kay shows up at his door and she's like, "Hey, I dumped my husband. It's over." And then they fuck.
And they exchange I love yous.
Yeah.
So there's
0
new
to 100.
developments. I know, seriously. New developments in Joe's world. Phil is sleeping on a futon in the house. He's irritated. Joe and MK are on cloud nine. They're going
Yeah.
to Fort Ward to explore and talk about their lives. She's kind of bringing up Phil a lot, and he's having a bit of an internal battle about maybe being like, is it too much to hear about Phil? But it's fine because they have sex in some bunker in Fort
Yeah.
Ward, and
Yeah.
they're just having
So
a good time.
yeah, lots of sex over the next few weeks, lots of, mixed emotions because the whole divorce. But
Hmm.
after they fuck at Fort Ward, Mary Kay gets a phone call that Phil has passed away.
Oof.
And that kills the mood, everybody.
Yeah, he is dead and gone. Overdosed in the house. We don't know if he went out to get heroin or found the heroin Joe left just
Yeah.
yet. And salt to the wound, Nomi found him, which would really fuck me up as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, not good, not good at all. So, rightfully so, Mary Kay is just freaking out. She's not in a good place. Weeks go by, and Joe's really upset that, Mary Kay's like relying on him, but things are a little bit different because she's so sad all the time.
Mhm.
Nomi's going to Seattle all the time. So, the dynamics are just off. He wanted them to be a family, but things have gotten really weird since their dad and husband died.
At the wake, MK's being very distant. He runs into Nomi, casually ripping a bong outside, which once again makes me think the author does not know what a bong is. Because you're really gonna transfer a whole ass bong to a funeral?
That's so funny to think about.
And so they bond, and Nomi's like, "I'm gonna go to Seattle," and she slips out. And MK tells Joe she wishes none of this would have happened, essentially, between the two of them, and that she's been depressed for 2 weeks. In this new world, Seamus is seemingly competing with Joe, and Nomi
Yeah.
keeps going to see Phil's parents who hate MK.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of tension. Seamus tells MK Melanda called him a few days ago, which, as we know, is a bold faced lie because she is dead.
Yeah.
And he says that she sends her love, but she didn't want to come back to the funeral because there's news of her having an affair with a student floating around.
Yeah, yeah, and then we get the surprise of the century. There's a new character added to the mix. Phil's brother Ivan, who's some like semi-famous motivational speaker. And he's coming, and Joe's been kind of on the upswing with Mary Kate being a big provider. And but now he's being really weird that like Ivan is here. So like Ivan's like, hey, like Mary Kate, how have you been? And Joe's like, yeah, we've been like taking it pretty rough. Like Joe's really inserting himself into this
Yeah.
family. And it's very, very cringe. It would give me the ick so hard.
Yeah, I would hate it. I would be like, this is my brother-in-law. Can we just like pretend like it's implied that you do not bring it
Yeah.
up, but he
Yeah.
has
So
no social cues.
Joe's kind of iced out for a couple days because, Ivan's here and he's going to be there for a little bit. Ivan does come to Joe's and invite him over to dinner, however, one night. So Joe's like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's go to dinner at Mary Kay's with Ivan.
Mhm.
And things are tense, and Ivan ends up inviting Joe into the kitchen. He's like, dude, I know about your affair. Um, you gotta back off. Like, this is not something you want to be a part of.
Yep, and Ivan has approached Joe about this after Nomi tells Ivan that MK wanted a divorce from Phil and basically indicates that Joe should probably leave considering he is the other man. Seems like Ivan slowly infiltrating, icing Joe out. But he breaks into MK's house and goes through her journals and does find out that it looks like at some point she slept with Ivan. And
Yeah.
even worse, Ivan owns the house. He had to bankroll them since Phil is just, I mean, broke. Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, and so it's kind of also implied that she might want Ivan at the end of the day too. So it almost kind of feels like Joe's now like second best. Now that her first choice is here, she can put all of her time into him. So Mary Kay's really avoiding Joe at this point.
It's a real
And
Lucille Bluth, fucking
yeah.
George
Yeah.
Bluth's brother situation right now.
Yeah, Mary Kay ends up having a big fight with Joe and like accusing him of taking advantage of her. She ends it and says she's moving, and Joe cannot have any of this. This is not how he expected this to go. So he does what anybody would do and vows to end Ivan's life,
Yeah,
metaphorically.
Joe starts doing a deep dive. Joe is me right now looking for a source for a story. I swear to fucking God, because this is what I do. He goes on TikTok, scrolls forever. He finds a girl who was assaulted by Ivan, shares her story on Reddit, and now people are coming forward. A woman named Sandra comes forward with a story. Ivan starts trending on Twitter. 19
Yeah,
other people speak out. His wife
not
starts a
good.
Twitter and just tweets me too, which is not good.
No,
And so he's at MK's to kind of try to mediate.
because
And
Ivan's throwing things.
yes, she's like, he owns this house. Ivan owns this house. I don't know what to do. And Nomi is crying because she essentially gave up school to go to Denver with Ivan and MK. And oh my God, shit hits the fan.
It's shit hits the fan. Like Joe does not realize how like bad he made things by doing this. Because we learned obviously, so Ivan owns the house and the house is sold. So now Ivan's gonna use all this money that was gonna go to the three of them just to pay his court fees. So
Yeah.
Joe's made them homeless essentially, but it's all good because Joe's gonna come and save the day. He just invites them to live in his guest house that he suddenly has, as it has never been mentioned until this very moment.
Yeah,
So
apparently
they
it was there
move
for
in.
like Ray and Dottie to come if they ever have 40, his son
Yeah.
there, but we know that he's never gonna have 40
No.
there.
Yeah, so they move in. Mary Kate comes over the first night. They have sex. And this kind of continues as they're starting to all live in the same property together. But Mary Kate gets really paranoid that Nomi's going to find out. So she's like, maybe we should cool it. And Joe's like, no, 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 Nomi won't find out. But then Nomi storms in one day and Nomi's found out. But she plays a
Mhm.
little practical joke. She's totally cool with it. She just wants to live in the main house. So they all agree that, Mary Kay and Joe take like the master suite, and then Nomi's gonna live in the whisper room in the basement, which feels weird.
I thought she was gonna find something, I was like, "Uh-oh."
Right? That's what I thought too.
Not good. But things are finally looking up for Joe. They all live under one roof. MK booked a trip for them to Port Townsend, and
Mhm.
she's stressed he's gonna get annoyed of her, but he reassures her that he won't. It's very sweet. And this moment is interrupted by Love texting Joe, that they
Yeah.
need to talk. She has a ticket for him to LA tomorrow, and she knows about MK and the daughter too, because MK posted a photo of her and Joe doing a little soft launch, as the Gen Z will call it, on her Instagram.
Yeah, so Love's pissed, and Joe has to abide because she's very threatening. So he leaves Mary Kay just like
In
a
the
sweet
middle of the
little
night.
note.
Yeah.
Yeah, little note saying family emergency, love you, bye. And he goes to LA. He meets Love in a honeymoon suite where it's weirdly romantic. There's like
Yeah.
flower petals. We don't really know what's about to happen. And Love pulls a gun on him, and monologue city baby. She's talking about how Joe never really loved her, that he stopped caring about her the moment she told him she was pregnant, and
She's kind of
all of
right.
this stuff. And yeah, and how she's been replaced and how he doesn't care, and he's just letting her, oh, you're just letting me do all the work parenting. And he's like, yes, because you paid me to leave.
She's also mad he stopped viewing her Instagram stories. And I mean, honestly, if I had a nickel for every time I approached my ex for not viewing my stories with a gun,
Yeah,
I'd
Meggie,
be a millionaire.
Meggie.
And it seems like sending him away and paying him off was kind of, the girl game of trying to get him to fight harder to win her
Yeah.
back.
It's revealed that it was kind of a test to be like, he'll jump through hoops to be with me.
I do love, she's like, it's been so lonely. I got jury duty and went just to make friends, which is like rock fucking bottom.
It's, that's like the saddest thing I think I've ever like read in a book.
I know. And Love is finally like, I'm gonna be the hero here. I can't let those girls you're living with befall the same fate. And she walks Joe out after admitting that she's like, I know that you tried to kill 40. And she goes to pull the trigger of the gun that she has, and Joe wakes up in the hospital after all of this.
Days later. So he's been shot.
13.
He's been
13 days.
he's been shot in the head somehow.
I
We
don't
don't
know how
know.
he survived it.
You don't know how he's like talking. There's no brain damage. Like there's no damage apparently. He's fine. But the nurses say that Love has died. So some shit went down.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, I wasn't supposed to tell you that." But Ray Quinn, Love's father, is going to show up, and he goes, "Joe, sit your ass down." And Joe's like, "I can't move. I've been shot in the head." And he goes, "Here's the alibi." And Ray says, "You know what, Joe? You're not going to press charges. You're going to tell everybody that you got mugged. Love died of cancer. That's the story we're running with." Very, very sad. He also ends up starting to choke Joe with his necktie and then decides that he can't kill him. Uh,
Damn. That's a daddy
and
right there.
now they're in a little showdown. They're a little showdown city. Joe says, like, "I don't want any of your money. I want the baby."
Yeah.
And Ray's like, "Why would I give you the baby when this happened?" And he shows them the video of him burying Melinda. And Joe goes, "No, that's not what it looked like."
So Ray makes him sign a contract to never see 40 again. And Joe scrams out of there to get back to a now silent MK who's blocked him everywhere.
Yeah.
She is not at his home when he gets back. She is at the library though, and she's pretty mad because while Joe was gone, her old buddy Howie from the beginning died. And Joe's like, MK, I got shot. Look at this comically large bandage on my head.
Yeah. I don't know why Mary Kay was like less understanding here. Like I get okay, yeah, I'd be upset that like they didn't like talk to me or like they just left me a note and didn't tell me what was really going on. But like if they got shot, you have to know some shit went down. Like, come on, Mary Kay.
Yeah, she decides they should just be friends, and he's, doing the sad Charlie Brown walk home when he when he runs into Nomi, and she's like, "Let me see the wound," and he shows her the wound, and she's like, "It'll be okay. Don't worry. She's gonna come around." And Joe goes home, but he's not alone at home.
No, no, no.
Seamus attacks him, ties him up, and he's mad Joe pursued MK because he loves MK and he's pissing on Joe, literally. He's
Yeah. Like,
literally pissing on Joe.
no, he's literally peeing on Joe, listeners. I want to emphasize that he is peeing on Joe.
We see the pee on
Close
Joe.
up on P.
Interior Joe's house, close up on P.
And this, y'all, this goes from 0 to 100 because Seamus isn't just gonna off Joe right here and done. No, no. Seamus has a plan. He transports Joe to the fucking middle of nowhere woods, ties him to a tree, and then starts pouring animal blood on him so that the cougars will get him. Like, who thinks of that? And he
Seamus
also, I
is
think, pees on him again, too.
Yes, Seamus is like, "Don't worry, in my extensive research of Bainbridge, I have noticed that there are big animals here, but it's not. The biggest ones we get are foxes and goats who come up to nibble on Joe." And then Seamus keeps getting pissed off that big animals aren't coming, so he'll just shoot them. He
Yeah.
just shoots the small animals.
Yeah, and Seamus is obviously, if Joe is not finessed, Seamus is something else. He is messy city. Seamus ends
Mhm.
up getting shot. Joe is blindfolded this entire time, so he's like, "What? Who goes there?" And he learns out his buddy Oliver's come to save him.
Yeah, his buddy Oliver, not really a white knight because he is just coming because he wants Joe to buy more stuff for him.
Doesn't Oliver also pee on Joe?
I d I think maybe. And so he starts undoing Joe's ropes. He's really bad at it, but he finds a knife in Seamus's cabin nearby. And he tells Joe that Ray was offering him a huge amount of money to give something to Joe. So he sent the video. And also, he got fired because Ray figured out he had the video the whole time. So now Joe is going to just be his bankroll until he gets his script sold. Because as we know, Oliver is an LA homie.
Yeah, yeah. Oliver's got a new agent. He's really excited about it. So Oliver's going back to LA and he kind of keeps his paws off Joe then. Like that's kind of his character arc. He's like, I got an agent now. I'm leaving you alone.
Hmm.
Um but then life kind of starts like going on, a month later. Joe decides to propose to Mary Kay outside of the library and she says yes. Everyone's saying Seamus was killed in a hunting accident.
Yes, Joe does come clean to MK about how his ex, aka Lauren, who is Love, was suicidal and threatening to take her life, so he had to go back to LA to try to stop her, and he got mugged. And that works for MK. And after he proposes, there's like a montage of them being so happy and in
Mhm.
love and getting married. Ivan didn't come to their marriage, but it's
No.
whatever. And they're dancing at their wedding, and when MK leaves, Nomi says Melanda texted her, which is a lie,
Lie.
that she's happy that Nomi's going to NYU, and Nomi and Joe start kind of slow dancing, and he's like, "This isn't good," and
Yeah,
she's
she
like,
starts
"I owe you."
yeah, she's like playing with his hair, and Joe's like taking a weird step back 'cause he's like, "That's weird." And she goes, "Oh, there's just a bug in your hair. You're being so goofy, you silly goose." And Joe's like, "Right. So I'm gonna avoid Nomi now because she's making me feel uncomfortable."
Yeah, and MK's like, "I saw y'all dancing," and Joe really doesn't know if it's like, is it in my head? Because MK seemed like happy, so maybe it was a
Yeah, like,
sincere
oh, they're
moment.
bonding. Like MK seems very much like father daughter, yay.
Yeah.
And then another day rolls around and Mary Kay's gonna go to like the city for a day, and Joe's like, "Oh, please don't, because that means I'll be here alone with Nomi, and there's only 4 days left until she leaves forever, and we don't have to deal with her really."
Yeah.
And MK's like, "No, no, no, you'll be fine." And so Joe's like, oh, "Okay." So Joe, obviously, when Mary Kay leaves, sits on the couch. He puts on Family Feud because he's like, "This is a quiet thing that I can watch for the next few hours."
Mhm.
And Nomi comes in, guns ablazing. She grabs a hard seltzer out of the fridge,
Icon.
kicks her
At
feet
11
up.
AM.
Yeah, kicks her feet up, and she's like, "Joe, I never thought she'd leave." And he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?"
I mean, that's some kind of shit I'd say if I was trying to finagle the TV. I'd be like, "Okay, now I want to watch my show." But
Yeah,
Nomi is like extremely pitbull voice. "I know you want me. You
yeah.
know I want ya." And she seems to think that they have a thing. And kind of admits that she set Seamus out after Joe. Joe realizes, "Oh, Seamus liked Nomi. Oh, I thought he had a thing with MK." But no, no, no.
No,
Nomi
no.
is 18 now and says that she would fuck him on the weekends. And I
Like,
think
she
it's been
wasn't
going on.
going to Seattle. She
No.
wasn't. She
I
was going
think
to fuck Seamus.
I think he kind of recruited her too, it sounds like,
Yeah.
since middle school, which is fucked up.
Gross. Yeah.
And she keeps saying, Joe, you were watching me. I know you love me. But he's like, girly, you're picking up all the wrong vibes.
Yeah, he's trying to shut her down hard. And then Mary Kay decides to come back when he's like trying to kind of like push her away. Because she's like, you know what? I've decided to spend the day with my husband. And Nomi decides to take the spotlight here and starts accusing Joe of coming on to her. And Mary Kay isn't buying it. Mary Kay's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, they're fighting, but MK doesn't necessarily believe her. It's also dropped at some point that Nomi knows that Joe has an ex girlfriend in New York who's dead, which was kind of, and then never
Weird,
addressed.
yeah.
But she's like, Uno reverse on this conversation. She's like, Mom, where do you think I got all those UTIs? I read Columbine. I thought you would send me to a shrink. And it was Seamus that gave her a ton of UTIs, which
Yeah.
I don't think I would think a second guess of. I'd be like, maybe your vagina's just weird. You're growing, you're a teen. I don't know. But also, I feel like
Yeah, I don't
UTIs are
know. But yeah,
predominantly
so
from sex. Who knows? I'm not a mom.
yeah. Well, but yeah, so obviously Nomi drops that bomb that she was sleeping with Seamus. And Mary Kay's not happy about that, but she decides to drop the bomb that Melinda and Phil were having an affair. So they've just kind of double bombed each other.
Yeah.
They end up like, kind of talking things out. They make up, and Joe's kind of like sidelines. And they're on the stairs and they kind of put their foreheads to each other to kind of, make up. And what happens next is that Nomi has her hands on Mary Kay's shoulder. And instead of finishing like they're like, oh, we're all good, all is forgiven, Nomi throws Mary Kay down the stairs.
She tosses her mom down the stairs, and MK is going in and out of consciousness. She has a pulse, but she's not responsive. And Joe has to call 911. And then there's an epilogue.
Yeah.
Um, and in the epilogue, he's left America, and by that we mean he lives in Florida.
That's literally what it says in the book. We're not making a joke here, everybody.
I love that even Caroline Kepnes hates Florida. That's great. MK is in a coma, so he's just kind of left Bainbridge,
Mhm.
and it's delivered that they're pulling the plug on her. Nomi texts that to Joe. So Nomi like
Yeah.
killed her mom, which
Yeah.
would eat at me.
Yeah, but it's okay because Joe has been sad opening Mary Kay's like dream of a bookstore in Florida. And the book epilogue kind of ends with him seeing a new girl that he likes. So it sounds like Mr. Joe's going to be moving right along here.
He's on to the next one.
Yeah, truly.
He's T.I.'s on to the next one. I think T.I. sang that song. But anyways, I'll fact check myself later. This brings us to our favorite segment. We had a pretty fun time with this one. As we said previously, Phil does have a band that did moderately well, and then
Mhm.
always hinted that he was writing a new album. So our top five is the top five unreleased songs from Phil's newest album.
Hell yeah. Coming in at number 5, this one we like to think that, Phil knew that Ivan's cancellation was going to come. So his song on his album is hashtag Ivan2. Really deep
Yeah,
of Phil to write that.
it's about his brother's allegations. We
Yeah.
we were toying around with Ivan the Terrible for a bit because I know he's a
Yeah.
historical figure, and I think that it encompasses all of it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's something in the chorus.
Yes, exactly. We haven't written it yet, but if you want it, email
Yeah. If
us.
you want us to write an album as Phil, the cheating husband from You Love Me by Carolyn Kepnes, let us know.
I have nothing going on and I'm sick. I'll take NyQuil and write it all tonight. Um, number four, this one is just Bitch Babe. As we know, he wrote a lot of songs about not really loving MK and also kind of hating his daughter. So this one's a strong thesis. It's kind of open to interpretation.
It could
Which
have it
woman
could be
in his
about
life
all
did
the
you
bitch
hate?
babes. Maybe it's about a single bitch babe. We don't know.
There's gonna be
Maybe
one less bitch, babe. You know?
I love that. Very R&B, very pop.
Thank you.
Number 3, the song's called 30th Birthday Blowjob. It's about the blowjob that he got on Miranda's 30th birthday. And it's gonna sound very, very fun, but it's gonna be about, ruining his own marriage.
Yes. Oh, was that number three, the 30th birthday blowjob?
Yeah.
Oh, I wrote one bar for it, which is that she's a swallower and I'm a wallower. Because
Yeah, and there's
he's
something
in an
about like, now blow out the candle, and like the candle's his dick or something.
yeah, I love it. Number two, We know that Phil's a bit of a competitive person, so we're thinking my red bed first. Because the red bed is this place in the library that Joe wants to fuck and does eventually fuck MK on. And I like to think he's in a little bit of a competition with Joe. He's like, it was my red bed first.
Yeah, yeah. So he writes a whole song about that. And then number one, obviously, Phil loves to be in charge. He's very much, I'm the protagonist. And he likes to think that he's better than every other musician in existence. So this song is called I Am God to really channel into those feelings that he has.
I love it. I think it's so great. And that does bring us to our final segment, the canceled character of the week. I have a little bit of a feeling that we are going to have the same one.
I think we will too.
I wrote down Seamus.
I wrote down Seamus too, thank God.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, Miranda's a prospective pedophile, but Seamus is a confirmed pedophile. So that really puts things into perspective.
Yeah, and especially if it's like your best friend's daughter, that's pretty bad. All of the Ivan cases we didn't really dive
Yeah.
into, but we actually got to know Nomi, and it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
It's obvious it
Ugh.
really fucked up her character.
Yeah. Really, really gross. Really, really not okay. And I'm glad that he is canceled this week.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our last episode of You Love Me, the third book in the You franchise. Join us next week when I think we're going to be doing the wrap up because the
Yes.
new book doesn't come out until April, so we will
Yeah.
not
Maybe
have
we'll revisit it
time.
then. Maybe we won't. Who knows? We love to keep you all on your toes.
But if you want to email us about any of your thoughts on this series or anything at all, our email is Meggie and Laura present at gmail.com.
And you, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maggie.
No,
You were going
you
to say
go.
more things. No, you go, Maggie. You go.
I was just going to say the next thing, so you
You
do
say
it.
you say the next thing. I feel so bad.
Also, we're on Instagram at Meggie and Laura, just underscores in between them.
Yeah, yeah. You can also follow us on TikTok and Twitter at Yeah, we read it.
And that's going to be our episode for this Wednesday, a Wednesday in March, the longest dang month.
Aw,
What a
that's so
bummer.
cute. Okay, well, we missed you all already. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week for the end of the season. And then we'll talk about our next season because that's what we do on this podcast.
That's how it goes.
Okay, bye everyone.